You have been invited to appear before this ad hoc committee, which investigate allegations made by Lieutenant General Nhlanhla Mkhwanazi, and that you have been invited to provide information in relation to the committee's oversight work. The committee is investigating, amongst others, alleged unlawful disbursement of the political killings task team, otherwise known as the PKTT or the NPKTT, and further, the alleged moratorium on the filling of vacancies within the South African Police Services, and alleged corrupt relationships between senior leadership within SAPS and members of the public, as well as political interference in the work of the SAPS. In extending this invitation, the ad hoc committee chairperson has indicated that you may provide such information to the committee if you so wish under oath in terms of the powers, privileges, and immunities of Parliament and Provincial Legislatures Act 2004. Please be informed that by law you are required to answer fully and satisfactorily all questions lawfully put to you, or to produce any document that you are required to produce in connection with the subject matter of the inquiry, notwithstanding the fact that the answer or the document could incriminate you or expose you to criminal or civil proceedings or even damages. Ms. Johnson, you are, however, protected in that evidence given under oath or affirmation before a House or Committee of Parliament may not be used against you in any court or place outside Parliament, except in criminal proceedings concerning a charge of perjury or a charge relating to the evidence or document required in these proceedings. Please be aware that in terms of Section 17(2) of the Powers, Privileges and Immunities of Parliament and Provincial Legislatures Act, a person who willfully furnishes a House or Committee of Parliament with information or makes a statement before it which is false or misleading commits an offense and is liable to a fine or imprisonment for a period not exceeding 2 years. You are required to take an oath or affirm that the evidence you are about to give is truthful, and so you may elect whether you take oath or affirmation.
Honorable Chair, I'll take the oath.
So, thank you so much. You have decided or elected to take oath.
Advocate Johnson, you are the head of the Investigating Directorate Against Corruption. We will refer to it as IDEC throughout the day, or those questions will be asked of you as head of IDEC, and you were appointed by the President as the head of IDEC on the 1st of March in terms of the National Prosecuting Authority Act. There was an amendment subsequent to your appointment, amendment to the IDEC Act in relation to its independence. Just briefly tell us about that.
Chair, thank you. I was appointed on the 1st of March 2022. At the time, it was not called the Investigating Directorate Against Corruption. It was called the Investigating Directorate, having been created in terms of a proclamation in April of 2019. Fast forward to 2024, and through a parliamentary process, the National Prosecuting Authority Amendment Act 10 of 2024 was passed. It therefore created IDAC, Investigating Directorate Against Corruption, as a permanent entity, which came into effect then on the 19th of August 2024.
Thank you. Now, the events of 6 July 2025, now well known, when Lieutenant General Kunazi had a media briefing. You obviously by now know about that, and that's given rise to the appointment of the ad hoc committee by Parliament, the National Assembly, to inquire into a number of allegations that he made. We're hoping that during the course of your testimony you can assist us on at least 3 aspects of the terms of reference of this committee. The one I know we briefly touched on it, but the 121 case dockets, there was some interaction on that aspect, but more pointedly, paragraph 4.1.12 of the terms of reference, which relates to prosecutorial conduct and the relationship between IDAC and the PKTT, that's the Political Killings Task Team, including whether IDAC or any of its officials unlawfully interfered in police investigations or exceeded its mandate. And then item 4.1.18, which is to scrutinize the interagency coordination among SAPS, Crime Intelligence, IDAC, / the NPA, Correctional Services, Metro Police, and the legal basis for the directives affecting the PKTT, which is a latter part of that terms of reference. So, but before we get into those specifics, perhaps just talk to us about your experience, your academic qualifications, your appointment as an advocate of the High Court of South Africa, and then your subsequent involvement within the criminal justice system, your initial experiences as a prosecutor, as a district prosecutor, and then your elevation subsequently to a senior state prosecutor, state advocate within the Director of Public Prosecutions.
Thank you, Chair. I do, in terms of the academic qualifications, hold a B.Juris degree and an LLB degree. I would hope that no one wants to know when I got those. They are extremely old. But in 2007, I also attempted and completed in that year a diploma in criminal justice and forensic auditing at the University of Johannesburg. It was part-time. I have various short courses that you complete during the course and scope of your employment, from project management, coaching and mentoring, money laundering, corruption, all of the relevant courses to enable you to do your work, Chair. I started prosecuting on the 1st of June, 1996, at the Magistrates Court in Alberton. I was then moved to the Regional Court in Germiston early in 1998. But in the Magistrates Court, we did the usual matters that are still done, from assault. Unfortunately, back in the day, I also had to do traffic matters. I also had to deal with maintenance issues, and got in between spouses and or partners about whose rights it were to pay for the upkeep of their children. But it was as basic as that. I was in the regional court for a very short time, where more serious offenses from cash-in-transit heists, business robberies, murders, and so on were done. And on the 1st of June 1998, Chair, I started as a state advocate at the then Attorney General's office in Johannesburg under then Attorney General de Vries. The National Prosecuting Authority came into being in 1998. And in December of 99, I was then promoted to Senior State Advocate and joined the Directorate Special Operations, colloquially called the Scorpions. I was there till the doors
Who
closed.
was the head of the Scorpions then?
At the time, in terms of the region, it was Advocate Gerry Nel, and the Deputy National Director in charge was Advocate Leonard McCarthy, but I reported directly to Advocate Gerry Nel as head of office. I remained there till the doors closed 6 July 2009. However, in that time, on the 1st of April 2004, I became a Deputy Director of Public Prosecutions, and around about April or May of 2006, I became a Senior Deputy Director of Public Prosecutions, which position I held up until the 28th of February 2022. And I then became the Investigating Director on the 1st of March 2022. In that time, I held various portfolios as a Deputy Director, overseeing prosecutions and investigations in the DSO. I was also at the DPP office and fell under what was called the organized crime component, where we dealt with organized crime matters. And from February 2019 till the end of February 2022, I was the National Coordinator Organized Crime at the NPA's head office.
Just the period when you were with the DSO, as you say, colloquially referred to as the Scorpions. Just discuss with us some of your experiences there and perhaps some of the more prominent matters or cases you became involved in as a prosecutor.
Honorable Chair and members, when the DSO started initially, it started with organized crime matters. And I think during the course of late 2003, what was then called ITSIO, which was the Investigating Directorate Serious Economic Offenses, also came over to the DSO. So the DSO then ended up doing what the Hawks now do: serious organized crime, serious complex, serious commercial crime, serious corruption matters. And that became the ambit of the work that the DSO did. I was mainly involved in organized crime matters, but later on became involved in the serious corruption matters that were done at the DSO. There, much like what IDAC operates now, we had deputy directors who would lead a team, and the team would be comprised of advocates of various rankings, as well as criminal investigators. And we would form a team that would then deal with the matters that were allocated to us. I myself dealt with various matters, not just the corruption matters, but when it came to one of the more prominent matters, one of the matters that I dealt with together with Advocate Gerry Nel was the investigation and prosecution of corruption allegations against the late Jackie Celebi, who at the time was the National Police Commissioner and the first African head of Interpol. And we saw that matter through to its finality. But in that time, Chair, the DSO was disbanded. And so in July 2009, as with most advocates, we were given an opportunity to choose which Director of Public Prosecution's office you would like to work in. Advocate Nel and I, who are Pretoria-based, chose the office of the DPP Pretoria, also because in October of that year, the matter for trial in the Celebi matter had been set down. And so practically it made sense that we would be in our home base and would be able to deal with the prosecution. And that prosecution was then finalized as it was with the guilty verdict being passed against the late Mr. Celebi, together with a term of imprisonment of 15 years. I've dealt over the years with other matters, and I wasn't married only to the corruption matters. We also dealt with some of the murder matters, conspiracies to commit murder, one of those being the matter of athlete Oscar Pistorius. Advocate Nell finished off or chose to leave the National Prosecuting Authority before that matter went back on appeal, and I finalized that matter, and we dealt with various matters over the years. So my experience in terms of matters was mainly organized crime and then into the corruption field.
Have you always been based in Pretoria? You were born in KZN?
That is correct, Chair. My first prosecuting stint on the 1st of June 1996 was at the Magistrates Court in Alberton. For purposes of correctness of the record, I did prosecute on a contract basis in Scottburgh in November, December 95, and January of 96, and then the contract finished, and then I applied to the then Department of Justice and waited for a position, which then became Alberton on the East Rand. I hadn't, other than those 2 or 3 months, prosecuted anywhere in KZN.
Just talk to us briefly about your formative years growing up in KZN.
Honorable Chair, I grew up in rural KZN. It's unfortunate that much of what I experienced then, some of our people still do experience now, which is the lack of running water and ablution facilities. That was the story of the growing up, walking to school at great distances on our rural roads. And there was a time when, fortunately, we were then able to catch a bus and travel great distance to school and back. My only friends at the time, and more so because my late dad was a policeman, in the apartheid era, us as black families were not allowed to be involved in politics, so there was no talk of politics. I had absolutely no political knowledge. I was not politically savvy at all. But we knew that as black people, we stayed together. So we were the only Indian family in that area, and then we had 3 African families, the Hlomayos, Kiliza, the Keles, and those were our best friends. So I grew up playing with my friends, waited for one another when we came from school. I had a favorite meal at the time, which Mam Kiliza used to make, which was samp. I think called them nusho more now. The kids there had favorite meals at our home. We all also, unfortunately, had to walk to a communal area at the police station to collect water. And so myself and my friends would, with our tubs and buckets, get to the communal area, carry buckets and tubs of water on our heads, walk back down, full up. So I had a very humble rural upbringing, and those were my friends. That is how we grew up. Unfortunately, though, when we went to school, we went to different schools. But after hours, after school, on weekends, that was us, that was family. And that is how we socialized, and that is really my upbringing.
And you also became fluent in isiZulu?
Yes, sir, I did. And if you would allow me, Chair, I taught myself to read. And the one thing I had to read, everywhere I went, I saw a sign. And the sign said, Abahamba kulendlela bayoboshwa. And I needed to know what that meant, because coming or being brought up in rural KZN, there were many farmers, and as we walked those paths from school, that was a very prominent sign. I also had to learn Afrikaans because there was this thing with the dog that said, pas op vir die honde. So that was my first self-taught Zulu speaking and reading. But I'm fluent in Zulu because part of the respect was we taught, myself and my siblings taught my friends English, they taught us isiZulu, and that is how I grew up. Also had to learn Afrikaans, of course, because given what it was at the time, our schools were bilingual, and we had to know English and Afrikaans, because if you failed Afrikaans, you also failed the entire exam. Not just if you failed English, you failed the exam.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I think that was the issue that gave rise to, or one of the issues was the language issue, the compulsory Afrikaans that you had to do, even as a black person. Anyway, so that was a political education, I suppose, on its own. But just fast forward, so you obviously had to move to the urban areas, go to high school or senior secondary school, go to university, and gain those degrees that you
Correct,
referred to.
not as urban. I don't know if you call a little one-street village an urban area, but yes, I was able to go to high school in a different area, and I then attended the University of Durban-Westville as it was at the time for both my qualifications.
Thank you, Advocate Johnson. Now, just to go to IDEC more specifically, first established in 2019, and I think, as you pointed out, was created or established by a presidential proclamation, and that arose really from the findings and the recommendations of the Zondo Commission.
Correct, Chair. The Commission had commenced in 2018, and so that gave rise to the birth of the Investigating Directorate at the time.
And when it was still known as the Investigating Directorate, that was headed by Advocate Herman Cronje at the time.
Correct, Chair, up until I took office on the 1st of March, 2022.
So subsequent to 2019, your appointment in 2022, and the amendment to the NPA Act, the mandate changed. So just tell us briefly about that, the initial mandate of the Investigating Directorate and the mandate now of IDEC.
So the initial mandate of the Investigating Directorate dealt mainly with the commissions of inquiry, to with the Party Commission that looked into irregularities into the PIC, the Nugent Commission of Inquiry looking into alleged irregularities within the South African Revenue Service, and then the State Capture Commission, colloquially the Zondo Commission. In terms of IDEC, the mandate seeks to also then deal with serious and high-profile corruption matters, also over and beyond the statutory offences one is allowed to look at, POCDETARA, PRECA, PFMA, MFMA, POCA contraventions, and then the common law contraventions, fraud, theft, forgery, uttering, and offences that in the main relate to dishonesty, Chair.
And subsequently, the mandate broadened to corruption more generally.
That is correct.
And would you be dealing with more complex cases of corruption?
That is correct, Chair. We are expected to deal with the more complex corruption matters, but that also brings with it, if I may add, in terms of the POCA, which is the Prevention Organized Crime Act, there are also our money laundering obligations, and so IDEC played a very prominent role in ensuring complex investigations, also of money laundering towards the FATF and towards us dealing with the grey listing issues.
Do you only act on matters referred to you, IDEC, or do you have some authority or powers to, as it were, that Latin phrase, mero moto, on your own? Do you take on corruption matters just because you were told about it or read about it in the media? How does that work?
Unfortunately, Chair, the entry into IDEC in terms of matters is very restricted. Yes, those matters that arise out of the 3 commissions, we are able to look into those matters. I would just like to clarify, Honourable Chair and members, that notwithstanding, we do divide up the work also with the DPCI, known as the Hawks, and what we do before we authorize new state capture investigations. We also check with them if perhaps they haven't already commenced investigations in matters that arise out of the State Capture Commission report and findings. Where they do, and they have already commenced, we hand over then a matter that can go in there and falls within the ambit of that specific matter. So we do engage with the Hawks. In fact, there's a weekly meeting that the head of investigations in IDAC attends with the Hawks so that we are able to synergize new matters and where we are with old matters, and whether or not there might be something in either or agency that the other might need in terms of assistance. But when it comes to matters coming into IDAC, even corruption matters, they have to come in through a referral, which is a Section 27 referral in terms of the NPA Act. And the only other way it comes in is if they are referred to the ID and IDAC through the Office of the National Director in terms of Section 28 of the NPA Act. So had it not been for the Commission's, Honourable Chair, it would be a referral from the National Director and a referral in terms of Section 27. We cannot per se go to a police station and say, this is what we've heard. Do you have those dockets? Give them to us. This is corruption. We cannot do that, and we haven't done that. And we cannot also go to the Hawks and say, we want to do this, so give us yours. What does happen is, where the Hawks also have started a matter and they feel that it might be best placed to deal with it in IDAC, there is then that handover and or joint working process. But you cannot just go take a matter. We can't just take over a case, project, or docket.
Yeah, I think that explanation is important, and I'm sure will be expanded upon later. But the Director of Priority Crimes, the Hawks, they deal with priority crimes. You deal with serious corruption cases, which would also indicate, or us as members of the public would expect to be dealt with as a priority crime. So you're saying the way you deal with it is you have a regular interaction with the Hawks.
That is correct, Chair, because the Hawks also have a mandate to deal with serious corruption matters. And so that there's no duplication or overlap. That weekly engagement seeks to ensure that that doesn't happen. But there's interagency working where we actually do share resources if they are needed. What IDAC is also able to do, Chair, is if there is a matter in our space, but there's a capability that also lies within the DPCI, we are able to designate those persons into an authorized IDAC investigation. So a DPCI investigator who's not seconded to IDAC can actually be allocated to a matter within IDAC through a designation process.
And we know now from the evidence and from the organizational design structure of the South African Police Services that there are also specialized units. And I think all of us now understand why these special purpose units have been established: murder and robbery, abduction, kidnappings, organized crime, mine killings in the mines, amazamas, and a whole host of specialist task teams, which would also indicate priority and certainly serious crimes. So do you interact at all with those units? And of course, one of those units is the political killings task team unit or task team. Do you interact with those units, or do you act with the national commissioner and his deputies who are heading those units?
To clarify, Chair, in my earlier days as a prosecutor, yes, the specialized task team that I would have engaged with was what was called the SVC, Serious Violent Crime. They mostly dealt with the cash in transit matters, business robberies, and so on. So that was the one specialized unit most of us dealt with. And that would have been the case even throughout my time at head office as a National Coordinator Organized Crime. We dealt with the various agencies that dealt with. So within the detectives, for example, as is with the Hawks, they also had specialized teams. They didn't call them task teams, but they had dedicated teams that would work with extortions, dealt with essential infrastructure theft, which was quite an issue. So we worked with teams that dealt with specialized matters. But the only specialized task team I did deal with was the Serious Violent Crime Unit at the time. When I became the head of IDAC, and IDAC itself, we only engaged then in terms of law enforcement in the main with the DPCI, which is the Hawks, with the South African Revenue Services, the Financial Intelligence Center, and we also deal with Treasury when we need to, have engagements with the Auditor General's office, but we haven't had to work with the PKTT because that has nothing to do with our mandate at all. So there's no engagements with them or the work that they do, Chair.
Okay.